So I haven't thought about what to say because I finally started working on this 16 to 24 page article that was due a week ago. So I didn't think about what to say today. What do you want me to talk about?
The article.
The article. Okay, I'm going to a conference at the end of the month that is organized by Luminary Temple in Taiwan, Venerable Bhikshuni Masters Williams Temple, and it is on the theme of education for Buddhist women. And so they asked me to speak about the education of Buddhist nuns in the West. And so I'm trying to talk about what's happening with the Theravada nuns in the West, with the Mahayana nuns in the Chinese and Vietnamese traditions in the West, and also with the Tibetan nuns in the West. And then using the Abbey as a case study. So it's a pretty long article, and there's a lot to say, because I've realized that people in Asia don't understand the situation of Buddhist monastics here in the West. How could they? Because they haven't lived here, and it's quite different than the way it is in Asia. I remember in 1996 when I went to Taiwan, no, 95, to invite Venerable Wuyan to come and teach Life at a Western Buddhist Nun, our 3-week program that was to happen the following year in Bodh. When I was talking about Western nuns, I realized the translator was saying Bhikshuni. And I said, no, we aren't, I was a Bhikshuni, but I said most of the people are not Bhikshunis. And she didn't really have a term to translate nun, because they were either Shramanarikas or Bhikshunis. And so that was a big learning thing for Venerable Wuyan to realize that the full ordination wasn't even available to the Western nuns, or to any of the Tibetan nuns for that matter. Okay? And so from there, just to see that wasn't available, and then of course we don't live in a Buddhist society, so people get ordained, the society doesn't know who we are, what to make of us. They see men in dresses and women who all look like cancer survivors. And our parents think that we've joined cults and don't support what we're doing. And society thinks we're all kind of weirdos because we don't work for a living and instead we live off donations. And of course, it isn't a Buddhist country, so there's not a whole population of Buddhists to support us. And even the Buddhists who there are, don't necessarily want to do that because they hold the Protestant work ethic and think you should work for a living. And also because they figure, well, why should I support you when I want to practice just as much as you do? So I shouldn't have to go to work to support you. So there's all these kinds of things going on that you never find in an Asian situation. Yeah, so just to try to explain to them what's happening. And then, of course, the whole thing of people ordaining and not living in communities and being out on their own and working at a job and, not having any Vinaya education and, because they're living with lay people primarily. And so just to try and lay that framework of this is the situation in which we live. And so, it's in this kind of environment that Sravasti Abbey is appearing. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Yeah, and then I'll also explain, because we've done a lot so far, but there's a lot more to do, and especially in terms of the education program. We've started our education program, but there's a lot more to do, and yet we have to balance it with the reality of we're a first-generation, monastery here, and so we have a lot of the infrastructure to build up. actually, I'm seeing, my experience has been that when you have to work hard, you appreciate things more. Sometimes when you move into an already established community, you tend to take things for granted. And then, sometimes there can be the tendency to be a bit lazy because you have a lot of support, you don't have to do much, and in some situations you can even see, not so much in the West, but in Asia, that the monastics get coddled, and that's not very good for your practice. Whereas if you really have to work hard, then you appreciate your opportunity to study and practice. And I realize all of you have been working very hard the weeks that I've been gone. And, I would get reports like, oh, we're working on Gautami House. And on one hand, it's really stressful. On the other hand, we're completely overjoyed to be doing it, in preparation for Geshe's Opus visit. And so I was very glad to hear everybody was working together and you had a joyous attitude in doing that. And if you felt a little bit of stress, just know that my experience has been that in Western places, projects do not get completed unless you have a High Lama who is coming. And across the board, this is the condition that means that a project gets completed. Because if you don't have a High Lama coming, it gets mañana a la mañana, and it gets stretched out and stretched out and stretched out. Okay? So if you experience a little bit of stress every once in a while before we have a course or a visiting teacher, that's totally normal. That's what happens in everywhere, because that's how you get a project finished. Okay? So it's not abnormal. It's completely normal. Okay? Of course, the antidote to do that is to work steadily beforehand so that you don't have to squeeze everything into a short period of time. But when you do squeeze, just know that, that's part of the ball game. Okay. So anyway, this is the paper that I'm working on. And, in terms of our education program, seeing what we've done, and starting the Vinaya class, and then having to juggle these things against, this contractor's coming and this guy's coming to do work, and we have to go here and there, and yet still doing that, all of that. And one thing that I really want to do is start a program for the lay people who feel a strong connection with the Abbey, where they have reading assignments and listening to Dharma teaching assignments, and so on, that they can complete at home, and then they come here 3 or 4 times a year for a group, so we can have a group of lay followers who are also well educated and feel a strong connection with the Abbey and are willing to sacrifice 4 whole weekends in a year, to come here. But I think that would be good, and that could also be, I think the first time we do that might be a 3-year program, that everybody here at the Abbey will also do the program, so that you have all the readings and all. And so I have all that in my mind, and I want to make out the curriculum. I just haven't had time to do it. Okay, but that's something that we want to do. And then also slowly, gradually introduce more of the philosophical studies, but to do so in a way that it always relates back to practice. Because I've really seen that if you do the philosophical studies without relating it to practice, your intellect gets very well developed, but as a human being you don't progress, So you really have to learn how to put it into practice and use it to look at your mind and to look at the nature of reality around you as well. Yeah, not just learn a lot of categories and debating strategies. Okay, because in some ways that can even lead to a bit of arrogance. Yeah, so we really want our program to be very integrative, produce whole people, not just brains. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that I'm doing in the paper and writing about.